Okay, well, good morning everyone. I'm Laurie Harper, the Supporter Engagement Manager, and it's my great pleasure to welcome warmly all of you to today's Wildlife Trust BCN Members Day and AGM. We're delighted that so many of you could join us today, both here in person and online. So a special shout out and hello to those watching virtually this morning. Hello all of you. So just before we do start the proceedings with various talks, just a little bit of information of housekeeping. First of all, regarding the meeting pack, you should all have received one upon registration, consisting of the programme for today, the AGM agenda, and minutes from last year's AGM. And as outlined, we do have a packed agenda for the day, and we will be doing our best to keep to time to ensure you have plenty of time for refreshments and lunch. But please do bear with us if timings do need to be flexed at any points. We do have a clock, we do have cards warning of time left on talk, so we're doing everything we possibly can. So we'll begin with a welcome from our chair, Dr. Hilary Allison, and that will be followed by a recorded message from Craig Bennett, our Chief Executive of the Wildlife Trusts, talks from our Chief Executive, Brian Evesham, Dr. Hilary Allison, the Young People's Forum, and Matt Johnson, Conservation Manager for Northants. In view of the tight schedule and to keep to time, we will take questions about the presentations after Dr. Hilary Allison's presentation. So we'll have Craig's, Brian's and Hilary's, and then we'll have some time for questions. The AGM will commence at 12 noon, and I'd be really grateful if we could all try and get back seated in time, just to make sure that you can enjoy the activities in the afternoon without delay. Fire safety, there are no fire drills planned for today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave via the nearest exit and congregate in the main car park at the front of the building where you all came in. And fire wardens will be on standby to help guide you. And the main exits are the two that you came in through, so the one here at the front and the one at the rear, at the back of the hall. Toilets, including accessible toilets, are located on this floor, so just out of the doors to the right, and you've probably seen those when you came in. And canteen and lunch, the canteen is actually located in this hall, but as space is limited, we will be asking you to collect your lunch bags at lunchtime and then head over to the gym where cakes and fruit will be waiting for you too. Smoking, this is a no smoking venue, and that does include e-cigarettes, so if I can ask you please to refrain from using those. And first aiders will be present throughout the day, and they can be identified with their green cross badges, and their names are listed in the hall too. There is also a manned first aid station, again back in the registration area in the foyer where you came in. And each walk will also have its designated first aider. So key timings, obviously 10 o'clock for the talks, 11:30 lunch, refreshment break, 1 o'clock lunch is served, and 2 o'clock coaches will be leaving for the walks. Finally, just a quick reminder, please can you all set your mobile phones to silent so you can enjoy all the talks we're having today. And basically another thank you, and I hope you enjoy all of today's AGM talks and activities. Thank you. And I'd like to pass over now to Dr. Hilary Allison.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you. So it gives me very great pleasure to welcome you all to the 2025 Members' Day and Annual General Meeting here in Prince William School in Oundle. Both to those of you in person and online. This is my first AGM as the Chair of the Council of Trustees, and I'm very greatly looking forward to meeting as many of you as possible during the lunch break and coffee breaks. So please come and say hello and come and talk to me and tell me about your perspectives on the Trust. As ever, the staff team here at BCN has put in a huge amount of work to ensure that you have an inspiring, informative and interactive day. So I hope you're looking forward to the programme. So between now and the coffee break, we're going to have the series of short presentations to inspire you about our work, past, present and future. And then after coffee, we'll have the formal AGM. Our first talk is from Craig Bennett, He is the Chief Executive of the Wildlife Trust movement, and as I'm sure you're aware, Beds, Cambs, Northants Wildlife Trust is an active member of the alliance of 46 wildlife trusts across the UK. And we're delighted to have a video message from Craig to share with you today. He'll explain the reasons why he's not able to be present. So let's...
Hello, I'm Craig Bennett, Chief Executive of the Wildlife Trust, and I'm delighted to be sending this video message in to the Wildlife Trust for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire annual general meeting today. I can't be with you today, much as I live in Cambridge. I'm a proud member of Wildlife Trust BCN, of course, and of course in my position I'm not allowed to have any favourite trusts, but you are my local trust. But anyway, I can't be with you today, I'm afraid, because I'm here in Abu Dhabi at the IUCN World Conservation Congress. So let me explain what that is. What is IUCN? It's the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It's by far and away the world's largest grouping of conservation organisations and scientists and governments working together to try and put nature in recovery. It's known for things like the red list of threatened species and habitats, and provides all the kind of clever standardisation as to what defines whether a species is endangered or extinct or vulnerable and so on. They also produce the categories of different protected areas and much more besides, things like most recently principles for nature-based solutions. Incredibly important organisation. As we at the Wildlife Trust were members of it, even more important, we were one of the handful of founding member organisations of IUCN back in 1948. Part of our heritage we should be very proud of. And I think it's really important for us to be re-engaging with IUCN and representing the work of the Wildlife Trusts, including Wildlife Trust Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire, here at Abu Dhabi at the World Conservation Congress. It only happens once every 4 years, one of these meetings. 8,000 people here, scientists sharing information about the very best practice from the conservation world and trying to grapple with big new emerging issues together, how to do it. What's on the agenda and what does that mean for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire? Well, there's a huge amount on the massive agenda of this Congress, but perhaps one of the most important things that we expect to do next week is sign off and agree this document between us all. It's the strategic vision for the next 20 years for IUCN about how we unite for nature on a path to 2045, about how we can bend the curve of nature loss globally. And of course, that has to be done really by action at the local level. The kind of things it means is talking about how we can deliver 30 by 30, getting 30% of our land and sea in recovery for nature by 2030. How we can drive kind of system change, not least in the economic system, to make sure economics actually values nature rather than the issues, challenges with that at the moment. What does that mean, say, for BCN? Well, it means actually the work you're doing in Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire, understanding how that contributes to the global target of trying to get 30 by 30 is hugely important. How does that fit in? There's a concept here that's talked about a lot called OECMs, because there's not enough acronyms in this space. That means other effective conservation mechanisms. So actually how, for example, can we manage agricultural land in Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire in a way that actually counts towards that 30 by 30. And I've been talking to people here, Brian Eversham, you'll be very pleased to know, been telling stories about the Great Fen Project and talking about paludiculture and talking about Trumpington Meadows and how that's a new nature reserve that's just been born in recent years. I'm telling all the stories about the brilliant work of Wildlife Trust, Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire here in Abu Dhabi, and spreading the word that what you're doing, and of course other wildlife trusts are doing, that is giving us hope about how this can be delivered. And then what does it mean in other ways? Well, actually, if we need a new relationship with the economy, we are here at IUCN building that consensus so that we can take it back into the UK and say that when Rachel Reeves says that there's this false dichotomy between economy and growth and nature, that's wrong. Actually, what the whole of IUCN is saying here is that we need to grow nature and grow the economy together in an integrated way, not pose them as one versus the other. So this is where we are with the Wildlife Trust now. I'm just so thrilled that this is very much looking at things from a global to local level and bringing the experience from the local, taking up to the global. Hugely important, influencing national policy and politics along the way. And we couldn't do any of that if it wasn't for supporters and members of wildlife trusts like you. Thank you so much for being members of Wildlife Trust for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Northamptonshire. Thank you so much for supporting the Wildlife Trusts nationally as part of that. And isn't it so exciting that we're working together locally, globally, and nationally to try and put nature in recovery? Thank you so much and have a great AGM.
Well, thank you very much to Craig, even in his absence, for that inspiring message. And as you can see, he's taking the work that we are doing in our 3 counties up to the international stage, which is really exciting. We're now moving to the in-person talks, as we've planned, and I'd like to introduce Brian Eversham, who is our Chief Executive. I'm sure Brian needs very little introduction to most of you, and he's going to give us an overview of why our area is uniquely important and our achievements over the past 25 years. So, Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Hilary, and thank you for everyone being here and being online and watching us. So my task in 15 minutes is to explain why Beds, Cams and Northants matter, why we've got some unique things to do, and quickly to celebrate the last 25 years to set the context for our next 5-year plan, A Wilder Future, which Hilary will be talking about very shortly. So what I want to talk through is the landscapes and nature reserves of our patch, why our own wildlife is distinctive and different, and maybe surprise you with 1 or 2 facts and figures there. Put it in the context of our climate research and how we're making our reserves more resilient, and touch a little bit on how we also engage with people. So, since 2000, our very first 5-year plan, we've focused primarily on 9 so-called living landscapes, the areas where we think we've got the best chance to make the biggest difference. And pulling together a list of what we've acquired or reinforced in that time, I think is really rather impressive. Many of you will find some of your favourite nature reserves on here, sites which we've purchased, we've expanded, we've linked together, and the bottom ones, the secured ones, are vital. Those are sites where our predecessors had managed to turn them into nature reserves, but with rather weak tenure. We'd have a management agreement or a fairly poor lease. And transferring those into trust freehold is actually the best way to safeguard them for the very long term. Now, some people think of Beds, Cams, I've heard it described as the flat, boring bit in the middle. And it's true, we don't really have much in the way of coastline, though there is a bit of salt marsh at the far north of Cambridgeshire. And we don't have any really high mountains, though if you live on the edge of the fens, then the Chilterns and the uplands of Northants feel fairly mountainous to me. But what we do have are some vitally important habitats, many of which we have internationally important examples of. And I'll run through these very quickly and try to put them in an ecological context for you. Starting with peatlands, partly because it's one of my favourite habitats, but partly because Cambridgeshire peatlands are some of the finest in the country. Looking at this map, you might get the impression there's a lot of peat happening up north and very little in our part of the world. Well, that's true, but it's worth bearing in mind not all peatlands are equal. Most of the uplands are thin, flat, rather species-poor blanket bog. The raised bogs in South Yorkshire, where I grew up, I think are particularly special, but Fenland has a unique assemblage of species. About a quarter of all British wildlife lives in the fens. And then the tiny Valley Mires, that little smudge in the middle, by the way, is not a mistake on the slide. That's Flitwick Moor in Bedfordshire, which I could talk about all day, so I best move swiftly on and don't do that. This is the underlying fact that most people tend to forget. There are more species in southern Britain than northern Britain. Roughly, for every 100 kilometres you move north, species richness in the majority of groups and plants and animals drops by 10 to 15%. If you want to predict species richness in Britain, the best single measure is the distance from Dover. Sad to say if you happen to live in the north of Scotland. There are exceptions, as the slide mentions, ferns and horsetails, mosses, liverworts, sedges, craneflies have their peak diversity in the north, and if your passion in life is sedges or mosses, then I'm afraid Beds, Cams, Northants. Good heavens. Can you still hear? Is that working? Yeah. Okay, I will shout. Hopefully we'll get it fixed for the next speaker. Can you hear me at the back of the room?
Yes.
Thank you. So, diversity gradient, more species richness in the south and east and north and west. So, our Finland peat is more species rich than almost anywhere else in the country. Flitwick especially important. So, when we started our first living landscape scheme, the Great Fen, linking together the two national nature reserves of Wood Walton Fen and Home Fen, this was the place we could do most for the most special wildlife. The yellow dots, by the way, are species for which a quarter or a half the British range is on our patch. Red dots are only found in beds, counts and north counts within Britain. If we don't conserve those species, they can't be conserved in this country. Our sandy heathlands are small and fragmented, but wonderfully beautiful. If you've been to Cooper's Hill or Rammermere Heath in peak heather season, nothing else looks like it. It's a wonderful, wonderful place, crammed full of small wildlife that some people get really passionate about. It's the best place in central England for heath and lichens. It's got almost a full set of solitary bees and wasps. The Potton snail, only known from 3 sites in Britain, one of which is the sandy bank at the edge of Potton Church. If you live near Potton, appreciate your snail. Alas, only 2 millimetres long, but beautiful. The chalk hills of the Chilterns and the rolling chalk of Cambridge and the Northampton limestone, are all very special places, and I suspect many of you will have favourite nature reserves on the chalk and limestone, and you can see why. We've about half of Britain's Chiltern gentians on our patch. The moon carrot at Cherry Hinton was mentioned in the first ever British flora in the 1600s, and it's still found at Cherry Hinton. John Ray found it, Whelan mentioned it in his flora, it's still in the Cherry Hinton area today. The Bedfordshire chalk has some wonderful orchid-rich sites that we should be really grateful for and proud of. Oh, and the green blob at the bottom left, a perfect pub quiz question. Which species do you recognise when you don't see it, and probably don't recognise when you do? And my answer would be glowworms. Not many people notice a little grub crawling around, but go to Cherry Hinton at night and see 60 or 70 bright green glows, and
We should have a microphone.
are we back in touch? Right, I don't need to shout. Thank you for saving my voice. And I put in the trout. We don't often talk about fish in these meetings, but we do talk quite a lot about chalk streams, globally threatened habitat. Britain has a unique responsibility for chalk streams. Our trust has a unique responsibility within that, and we are doing our bit. Now, one of the reasons our area might be thought of as the flat, boring bit in the middle is it's got some of the most productive farmland in the country. The boulder clay is the reason why this area grows so many crops. It's also the reason why so much of our land has been converted to cropland and why we've got so little surviving woodland and other habitats, so much so that we need to rebuild them. However, boulder clay has a couple of special things in its favour. It produces some of the most beautiful, most species-rich meadows in the country. Here's ridge and furrow grassland. I think that one's Upwood Meadows, but it could easily be Chetisham or one of the half-dozen other surviving green-winged orchid sites which we're looking after, and indeed which this trust has been looking after in some cases for 50 or 60 years. And the boulder clay woodland, everybody likes woodland, but our woodlands have a couple of special features that we can be proud of. Half of Britain's oxlip woods are in beds, cams and northants, and the return of the checkered skipper to Northamptonshire is the return of the checkered skipper to England. The last English site was in Cambridgeshire. The first new English site is in Northamptonshire, and I look forward to the day when checkered skippers have recolonised a high proportion of our amazing boulder clay woodlands. The two major river valleys on our patch, the Ouse and its tributaries and the Nen and its tributaries, are really important for wildlife. And I wouldn't have thought 20 years ago that we'd be championing the fact we've got a shopping centre next to one of our nature reserves. But the idea that we have saved the rest of the Nen wetlands, linked together our existing 4 nature reserves, bird numbers have been sustained through the development of Rushden Lakes. 7 million visitors a year can come there, and the bird numbers have been maintained despite that. And we now have beavers breeding in Northamptonshire. The first 2 kits appeared in the last month, and that's the first time, I would guess, in 800 years. There are virtually no records south of Yorkshire since the 13th century. So for 800 years, Northamptonshire has been lacking beavers. They will transform the River Valley woodlands into something closer to the big riverine forests of Central and Southern Europe. It's a habitat that went extinct in Britain, or very close to extinct. The beavers are helping us put it back. And again, lest you forget, the Nen Valley is internationally important for its wintering wildfowl and golden plover. The river valleys, both the Nen and the Ouse, have nationally important dragonfly populations. And the gorgeous fish with a rather surprised expression on its face is a spined loach. Half of Britain's spined loaches occur in our rivers and gravel pits. Again, if we don't look after them, no one else can. At this point, I should be saying thank you. Strawberry Hill has been saved through our most successful appeal ever. The generosity of our members has been astonishing, and this vital site is now safe for the long-term future. And that's important for several reasons. It's a big site. I don't know of another 350-acre block of vibrant wildlife-filled scrub anywhere in central England. It's a diversity of grassland, scrub, and some mature woodland. But the key phrase for me on this site is the abundance, the bioabundance, the wildlife overspilling the site and flowing out into the wider countryside. It's the sort of place that's going to be at the heart of the Nature Recovery Network they're going to work hard on for the next 5 years. Strawberry Hill is already impressive and amazing. If you've been there on a spring morning, you will have heard birdsong like no other. It took me back 40 years to growing up in Yorkshire and on the edge of a massive peat bog, where the dawn chorus was really something to stir the soul. Strawberry Hill and its 35 pairs of nightingales still do that. And the caterpillar is the reason. Going out with a sweep net, I've found greater numbers of caterpillars on the scrub at Strawberry Hill than any other site I've ever sampled. And it's not just me. A specialist entomologist who's surveyed most of the British rewilding sites says Strawberry Hill is far more species rich and has a far bigger biomass of insects even than the famous Knepp in Sussex. So our nightingales are supported by an amazing insect population, and our job over the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years is to maintain as much of that diversity as we can. Strawberry Hill's also a focus for serious and important research. We think it's possible that Strawberry Hill has already reached peak carbon, that a mosaic of carbon-rich grassland that's taken 30 years to develop, plus the scrub, may support as much carbon storage as high forest. That's a really important point for 2 reasons. One is, it means there are no massive carbon benefits to allowing the whole of Strawberry Hill to turn into what, I hardly like to say it out loud, I suspect would be 200 years' worth of rather dull secondary woodland, without the nightingales, without most of the songbirds, and missing out on all the exciting ecology that happens on the edges of habitats. The other good news is, if we're right, this sort of habitat, which is quick to create and very species rich, is something most farmers could do, and know that if they needed to reverse the process, they could, but for the time being, they can store a lot of carbon, create a lot of wildlife habitat, and they don't make the commitment to long-term woodland. The other areas where we've done some work, which, again, 20 years ago I would not have predicted, we are piloting wet farming, paludiculture in the fens. This is a way of growing crops while maintaining the peat. You may know that the peat in the fens is disappearing from farmland at the rate of over 2 centimetres per year at the moment. That means that most of the peat will be gone within 50 years. Only one farming generation left before we hit the acid marine clays and the stuff which will be very difficult to cultivate. So it needs to change, and we're offering farmers an alternative. And over the next 5 years, I suspect farmers will be renting out some of our paludiculture beds to try their own crops and cultivation to see what they can achieve with high water levels that carry on production of food, but do so without damaging the peat. And the statistic that shocked me, and which I think helped persuade the lottery to help us buy Speechless Farm, the fens are responsible for half the CO2 produced by UK farming, coming entirely from peat erosion. So loss of peat in the fens is doing as much as everything else in farming in Britain in terms of producing greenhouse gases. Quite shocking. Looks rather odd when you first encounter it, but banking on butterflies is one of our most exciting research projects. It's demonstrating that small slopes, north, south, east, west facing, sheltered and exposed, create microclimates where butterflies and other wildlife can thrive, even during the 40-degree heat wave of 2022. And Ed Turner and his students were actually out on site in that 40-degree heat and demonstrated butterflies behave very oddly, and they basically stop doing anything when the temperature reaches about 35 degrees. There's real high-quality science in there with a better understanding, and small bits of topography could be appearing on a lot of our sites over the next 5 years. We've already got some butterfly banks installed at Trumpington Meadows. Expect a little bit of undulation to appear on a fair few sites to give wildlife a chance to stay where it is during climate change, rather than all species having to migrate north. The Trust has been about people as well as wildlife from its very inception. Education, outreach, community work's been vital to us. The phrase Team Wilder you'll hear more of in the near future. It's actually the right way to do community engagement anyway. We've often done this, and we've had to do this with farmers in particular. Team Wilder is about asking people what they want, listening to people, and then offering them options and solutions. If you try to tell a farmer what to do, you will fail. If you listen to a farmer and offer various suggestions and options that might work, then you can actually succeed in changing hearts and minds. The same with all communities, with businesses, and ultimately even with politicians. Though I best stop there. My views on present politicians may not bear repeating. You'll be hearing from a small set of our Young People's Forum very shortly. This, I think, is one of the things we can be most proud of and most excited by over the last 5 years of the Trust. Listening to young people is inspiring for all of us. They are great at holding us and indeed holding politicians to account. Having seen the previous elected mayor of Cambridge and Peterborough, before and after a 2-hour walk with the Young People's Forum was quite instructive. He bounced along looking really positive and on top of the world, and he came back looking haggard and 10 years older. He had been really put through it. He had been questioned with greater insight and intelligence than he'd ever faced before. And the great thing is most politicians feel they can't say no to young people. As somebody who runs training workshops with them occasionally, I know the feeling. But this is a joy, and this is telling us our future is in good hands, but it's not letting our generation off the hook. We need to do better. Alas, one of the things Bedcams and Northampton is famous for is losing species. Northamptonshire has the distinction of having lost more plant species in the last century than any other English county. It's more than one extinction per year for the last 100 years. But I selected this particular group to make the point that it's not all a one-way process. Extinction doesn't have to be forever. So starting at the top, fen violet has returned from the seed bank. It was never really extinct, it just wasn't growing on the surface of the peat for 20 or 30 years. Beavers are back and thriving and breeding. I struggle to call it the Norfolk hawker dragonfly. What ought to be the Cambridgeshire hawker is back in Cambridgeshire. Its first British sites were around Whittlesea Mere. It's now back in the Great Fen. It's back at Felmersham. It's thriving. Natterjack toads have been breeding on the RSPB site at Sandy. And this year, large marsh grasshopper returned to Cambridge Fens for the first time in 60 or 70 years. The largest, most colourful of our grasshoppers. I don't think we'll get Capricorn beetle back. It's probably 3,000 years ago since they were with us. And swallowtail will be a struggle, but it's not impossible. There's very little that we've lost that we can't eventually put back. But the Trust's approach is not so much to focus on species, but to get the habitats right, to get the habitats larger, better connected, well managed, and then the species will very often surprise us and turn up of their own accord. But I have to say, the public interest and the media interest in letting large mammals into the countryside is second to none. And that's something I think we should also be celebrating. And finally, just a quick overview. All of these species are Bedcams Northampton specialties. If I'd got an extra half hour, Laurie would kill me. I would go through and explain all of these things, but many of your favourite species will be there. Yellow dots, as I say, a large proportion of the British range is on our patch. Red dots are Bedscams Northampton species that occur nowhere else in Britain. And a personal plug, the elms and the Goldilocks buttercups are global endemics. The whole world's population of 10 elms and 15 buttercups is found on our patch. If we don't conserve those species, they become globally extinct. We've done our very best over the last 25 years with your help, and we are determined to do more and to do better. The crisis has never been stronger, the need has never been greater, but the support and the science has never been clearer. So thank you for all you've done for the Trust over the last 25 years, and I will now hand back to Hilary to talk about the next 5 years, and fingers crossed the microphone carries on.
So, hopefully you can hear me okay. Yes, thank you. That's very reassuring. So, Brian has outlined beautifully and in his own inimitable way what makes our 3 counties really special and some of the exciting achievements over the last 25 years. But now we're entering a new 5-year plan phase called Our Wilder Future. And we launched this back in April, and it takes us on the next stage of our journey. So without us, I think it's pretty certain that our 3 counties would be much poorer in wildlife. It's also certain that our vision, shown here, of people close to nature, close to nature, in a land rich in wildlife, is a hugely ambitious one, and it requires substantive action. But as the saying goes, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So to achieve our vision and our goals, we do need a strategic plan, and we need it to cope with the effects of the huge changes in the world outside in the last 5 years since we wrote our last plan. And as you know, it's been a pretty torrid time. We've had inflation, we've had economic uncertainty, political instability, and new government, and all of those things have affected us, like other organisations too, in many ways. Pressures on our salary bills, the availability of grants, the spending power of you, our supporters, ups and downs in countryside and planning policy. All these have had their mark, made their mark on us. So I wanted to draw out 4 underlying themes in our plan before walking you through the main points. So the first thing is there is a need for urgency in our plan. Because we do remain in a nature crisis and a climate crisis. And these are not just global, but they are local. Because despite everything we have done, our patch is one of the most nature-depleted parts of the UK. And people and nature in our region are already feeling the impacts of extreme weather, such as flooding, droughts and heat waves. And I'm sure you can testify to that too. So to address urgency, our plan has to be ambitious. And for us, ambition means we need new streams of funding and new ways of working. The good news is that we do have an appetite for calculated risk, as we have shown by our large-scale acquisition of Strawberry Hill. And that ambition will definitely encourage us to work at scale, wherever and whenever we can. And we want to continue to think big, as we do in the Great Fen Restoration Project, and do the same thing in other parts of the area we work in. And finally, impact. This is quite a trendy word in the not-for-profit sector, but I think it's a really, really important word, because we need to make sure that we don't confuse being very, very busy, running around doing lots of things, with acting with purpose. So our new plan will be much clearer about the true change and long-term impacts that we're going to be striving to achieve. So here is a top-line summary of the plan. I'm going to walk you through this, so don't worry if you can't read all of the individual words. But we've summarised it onto a single page, which is actually quite important. So we have 3 overarching goals for the next 5 years. The first goal is to see nature in recovery. Now, we know nature is depleted and it needs a helping hand to recover. We have lost, as Brian has said, diversity, and we have also lost abundance of common species, the things that you and I, in our younger days, were very familiar with, but which are now no longer familiar. So what will nature recovery actually look like for us? Oops, here we go. So these are some of the impacts that we want to see as a result of our goal to deliver nature in recovery. We want our own nature reserves to be in the best possible condition for wildlife to thrive. We need a really well-connected network of nature-rich sites across the countryside, both those that we own and both that other people own, and in their stewardship. And we want to make sure that whatever conservation action we take, whether it's creating or restoring habitats, species, recovery work, reintroductions, we're going to be informed by the best evidence and science we can muster. We can track how well we're doing, and we can contribute that information to the wider world. And that's been a historic strength of our trust in particular because of its strong associations with scientific institutions and universities. So moving on to the second goal, this is about people taking meaningful action for wildlife. Now, we know from you, our supporters, that wildlife matters to people, and its loss matters even more. And we also know that people care about the nature particularly close to them, on their doorsteps. And we want to do something, and everyone wants to do something, indeed anything, big or small, to help nature recover. Now, we already support many groups within our supporter bases to take action for wildlife, but we do think this requires a bit of a reset. So what will change look like? Brian has just mentioned the phrase Team Wilder, and this is, just to elaborate it a little bit further, it's an approach that we and other wildlife trusts across the UK are adopting, and it's about changing the way we engage with people. It's about empowering grassroots conservation. So it's about listening carefully, and we will end up helping groups and individuals to have confidence to act themselves with our support. So Team Wilder is more about consciously working with communities to help them grow, and it's less about long-term hand-holding and working on their behalf. So that's quite an important shift. And as Brian said, we can do that by offering a menu of help, not a single approach, and that's about groups deciding what's best for them. It sounds really simple and obvious, but it's an important mindset shift. And now, if we get all of that right, we will hopefully see an increase in our membership and supporter base, and in funding and in business partnerships. And if we get more resources, then we can spend those wisely to have more conservation impact. And with more people taking action, our profile should be enhanced with all of the benefits that follow on from people knowing us and trusting us and supporting us. So our third goal is about natural solutions. This is what I call our win-win goal. It's about making sure nature is seen as part of the solution to many of our human problems and challenges, because we all know that nature is good for our well-being, it's good for our health, it's good for tackling climate change, flooding and erosion. And in our 3 counties, we already have great examples of this, some of which you've already heard of, such as our exciting experimentation in nature-friendly wet farming in the fens to soak up carbon and retain floodwaters, and our work in natural green spaces close to urban communities, sites like Cambourne and Trumpington Meadows on the edge of Cambridge, providing attractive places for people to live, work and relax close to nature, improving the quality of life. So, what's that actually going to look like in practice? Well, we hope that decision makers will see the potential for natural solutions relevant to their issues. And this will require us to undertake proactive advocacy to local decision makers. So we'll demonstrate these benefits with show and tell about the great work that we're doing on locking up carbon and nature-friendly farming and so on. And we want to make sure that the decisions on planning and transport and infrastructure actually reflect decisions to include, protect, and incorporate nature as well. So our three counties are targeted for a lot of housing, transport, and economic investment, and the evidence is all around us. So it's critical that those decisions need to be informed by nature at the earliest opportunity in those decision-making processes, so that nature is protected from harm, but also integrated into those major proposals for human benefit. So, just moving back to our plan on a page, I've talked at quite a lot of length about the goals. I'll move more quickly on to what we call our strategic transformations. Sorry about the jargon, but this is actually another way of saying that we're going to do certain things bigger or better or differently. We're going to shift the dial a bit. So the importance of delivering our nature recovery network is really absolutely central to what we are doing, both on our own land and where we adjoin other land that is managed with sympathetically for nature. And we'll do that through advice, expertise, and support, as we have done in the past. It's not new work, but it is still incredibly fundamental to the goal of nature recovery. We've talked about our work on empowering communities with Team Wilder, but we're going to continue with all of the great work that we do with schools and running attractive and engaging events for others of all ages. And hopefully that will bring more people into contact with nature, allow us to reach new audiences and be more relevant still. We want to deliver a step change in our fundraising. Now, our newly launched Wilder Future Fund will aim really high to generate more unrestricted and designated funds, which are linked to our 3 refreshed goals. And you may well have seen some of that already in the communications sent to you by the Trust. Now, this is really important because what we want to achieve is greater financial flexibility to act quickly and grasp new opportunities, new Strawberry Hills, new Great Fens, whatever that may be in the future. And to do that, we need money that is not linked with individual projects that we can't touch. We need flexible money to be able to move quickly. There's digital transformation is on here. There's no escaping, I should say, the transformative power of new technology. And there are loads of great things that it can do to help us in our work. Monitoring wildlife, planning our reserves management, communicating messages, and managing our business processes. So it'll help us work smarter, faster, and with greater insight. And we also, in terms of breaking down barriers, this is about partnerships. We can't do everything ourselves. We are better together. The task of nature recovery is too large for us to do it alone, and partners bring different skills to the table. They might include local government, other voluntary bodies, businesses, and also the wider Wildlife Trust's movement. And as an example of that intent, we're in the early stages of discussions with 4 of our neighbouring trusts about a visionary project relating to restoring rivers and wetlands across the whole of the east of England. So watch this space as that develops. Finally, at the bottom of the one-page plan, you'll see a line called Enabling Priorities. Now, these are what I would call foundational tasks that help keep us in good shape to do the things that you, our supporters, expect of us. It's about doing the basics well, but that can't be underestimated and has to be acknowledged. So I'll just quickly run through these. Essentially, we need good governance at BCN. We're a growing organisation. It's grown hugely, even in the 4 years that I've been on the Council of Trustees. So we must make sure that we have a strong executive team and a good Council of Trustees to oversee the direction of the Trust going forward. We need to retain and build and look after our supporter base. We need to be good stewards of our reserves, and we must walk the talk as an environmental organisation in terms of our own sustainability practices. And then finally, we want to focus on a strong, clear professional identity. We also need to invest in our staff. You've met many of our staff, I know, and they are truly inspirational. So investment in their development and their skills is vital for us to achieve. And we also need to look after our volunteers. Many of you in the audience are volunteers, and we'll hear more about some of the great stories later on from our volunteer teams. And you add a huge value and legitimacy to our work, providing us with, as Octavia Hill, one of my environmental heroines, has said, you give us gifts of time as well as gifts of money. And finally, but last but not least, we must continue to speak out about the work that we do, and we must speak out to defend and promote nature in our 3 counties. So that was an incredible scamper. I'm on time, thank you. That was a very quick scamper. I apologise, there's a lot to cover in this new plan. So I just wanted to end with saying how you can help support our new Wilder Future 5-year plan. There are 3 simple things you can do. Please consider supporting our Wilder Future Fund. Please spread the word about the Trust to your friends and family and persuade people to be part of the family. And please stay in touch. There's lots of ways now in which you can keep connected with the Trust, and we would love to do that for the future. Now, at the end here, I just got a lovely video that the Trust has prepared, which I absolutely adore. I love seeing it over and over. And there's a bit in the middle which really makes me kind of go all goosey when I see it. So I hope it does the same for you. I won't tell you what it is, but I think you'll probably work it out. So this is a short introduction to the Wilder Future Fund. Thank you to the staff in the comms team for producing that lovely video. My favourite bit, by the way, was the grebes. Just saying. Anyway, thank you. I think I hand back to Laurie now to introduce questions from the floor.
Yeah, lovely. Okay. Oh, I am back on. So yes, we're going to invite some questions from the floor for both Brian and Hilary. We've had a few technical problems with our microphones, so I'm just double checking that we've got that all in order before we commence. So do bear with me 1 second. Make sure that works. No. It says off. Let's put it on mute. Okay, the other one is where? Should be another one?
There are 2 up here.
Is there 2 up there? Lovely, let me try that one. Thank you. That's working, lovely. Okay, so yes, as I said, we'll invite questions from the floor for Brian and for Hilary. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm here. Okay.
I'm not sure which one of you to direct this to. What is your attitude to the 3,000 acres of solar farm going into these counties, given that we drive around Northampton and through all these industrial estates and there is not a solar panel on any of the new roofs, and yet we are covering our green land with it? I'm not against solar power, we have it on our roofs, but yeah, I'd like to have your take on it, please.
Well, I may be going a bit off-piste here because I haven't read the Trust's policy on solar, if indeed there is one. But you're right, this is one of the tensions between the climate and the nature crisis. We absolutely need to be investing in renewables, and the trends for that are extremely positive at the moment. There are ways of combining solar with both farming and nature-friendly land management. It's not a complete binary, but I don't think that's a very well advanced area of expertise, and certainly you don't see a great deal of evidence of that when you're going around the countryside. But you're right, absolutely. I mean, from a personal point of view, I think it's absolutely criminal that that building regulations are not reflecting the need to install solar panels on every new build. I mean, the return, the extra cost versus the long-term return is really relatively small, and it's a crying shame. I don't know to the extent to which, and maybe Brian can answer this, to which the trusts nationally campaign on issues to do with renewables through Catherine Brown, the Director of Climate and Climate Adaptation at the RSWT centrally. Brian, do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, the thing I was going to say is we're not making new land. We're a small, crowded country. We need new homes. We're going to need better, more sustainable transport. We need renewables. We need to tie all that together. And I don't think it's the house building industry that's going to be the problem. I think it's central government being unwilling to regulate. A few years ago, I attended a national meeting of the heads of most of the major house building companies with Michael Gove when he was Secretary of State. And at that meeting, the major house builders said, we welcome high standards as long as everybody has to live up to them. Set regulations, and if that means solar panels, grey water recycling and everything else, house builders will build to that standard if they're told to. And if all houses are built to the same standard, there isn't a problem. The problem is when people compete for the lowest standard, and that's where we've got to. And large-scale solar farms on arable land are slightly cheaper than on roofs. That's the only difference. As a country, we're one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. If we can't get this right, nobody else is going to get it right. And oddly enough, I suspect the Chinese and the Indians are going to be way ahead of us on this.
Okay, so we have probably a chance for one more question if there's anything else in the audience. Otherwise, I would certainly recommend catching up with Brian and Hilary and any of the executive team during refreshments and lunch. Do we have any other questions for them at this moment? Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay.
Right. We are absolutely on time, so I am going to get my brown bag at lunch. I was probably going to be denied that if I helped to contribute to a very lengthy and overrunning agenda. So my great pleasure is now to introduce to you the Young People's Forum. For those of you who've been to previous AGMs, you will recall the Young People's Forum's presentations, which have never failed to be inspiring and uplifting and occasionally a bit provocative, which is all to the good. So no pressure, guys, in what you're going to say this time, but do come up to the stage and I'll let you introduce yourselves, because there's a big group of you and I want you to get your own names right rather than me get them wrong. Thank you.
We're going to do names first. So I'm actually ladies first.
Oh. Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin.
I'm Alfie.
I'm Alex.
I'm Callum.
And I'm Aaron.
Thanks. Do I physically? I'll do it. Okay. Okay. Who are we? Can you all hear me at the back? Yeah. Good. I need to not stand in the way of the slide. Yeah, that's good. So the Forum is a motivated group of young people inspiring action for wildlife. The aim of our group is to help the Trust work better for young people. We welcome the Trust's new 5-year plan, as we are always keen to consider the new future and its implications for young people. And we also feel that getting young people into wildlife is also important. And where am I? In this presentation, we will explain how our projects align with the plan before sharing our vision for the future with you.
Along with the Young People's Forum, we also have the Youth Rangers, which are individuals between 11 years old to 17 that meet monthly, and they do a lot of different practical conservation activities. This can range from litter picking and cleaning up reserves to undertaking really important orchid counts at upland meadows, or even helping with scrub enroachment at the Dogstall Start Pit. Sometimes we meet up with the Youth Rangers and we have jointly meetings where we both get our hands dirty. So the last time we helped with tree planting at the Ramsey Nature Reserve.
Yes, so part of the Forum's work in helping nature and recovery, we do some practical work, such as the tree planting at Ramsey Heights, and we also had a few members go to Wisbeek Care Home, and it was a good opportunity for both residents to benefit from wildlife and also just nature to benefit from digging a large pond in the hope that some wildlife will call it home.
Nature and recovery. Wildlife gardening. In June, the Young People's Forum joined the open gardening event at Camborne, focusing on wildlife gardening. We collected pledges from attendees that they would implement some of our wildlife-friendly gardening tips. Gardeners can increase biodiversity and connect fragmented habitats from their home. Overall, this supports ecosystem stability, aids pollination, and helps tackle environmental issues. Without amazing people like you, this vital work wouldn't be happening. Thank you all for your wildlife-friendly gardening. People talking meaningful action. Social media. Engaging with young people through social media to empower them to take meaningful action is really important. For example, our introductory video filmed at Strawberry Hill and our video about mental health filmed at Ramsey Heights. Also engaging with a wider demographic through our hashtag about wildlife-friendly gardening introduced at the Camborne Open event, garden event.
So as part of our People Taking Meaningful Action, we've had our Young Persons Forum meeting various politicians and MPs. And I know Brian Evershan talked about our meeting with Nick Johnson, the former mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. You can go and read my blog on that if you want more information, but I talked about it last year, so I won't go into too much detail about that. But we plan as a forum to have more such meetings with MPs in the future, because particularly now we've got a relatively new government. I think we can still call it that, although I don't know. But we plan to meet MPs as part of in this new parliament and government in order to ask them about their plans for nature over the next 5 years and hold them to account. And in this section, I must finish by saying that I think for far too long, the youth voice and young people's vote has been, MPs have almost taken us for granted. And we're here to say that that's not going to happen anymore, not on our watch. And therefore, I say that we will hold them to account, and if they fail to adhere to our high standards, we'll kick them out.
So something slightly different, we've also attended events such as Trumpington Community Nature Day. So there were other organisations there such as Climate Change Gardening. And we had a stall encouraging people to create their own plant pots made of newspaper and hovelite lagoons made from plastic bottles, leaves and twigs. It was quite a nice event because there were lots of people who came up to us saying that they didn't have any garden space, but they did have a balcony, and our suggestions were perfect for that. And wildlife gardening is a small, meaningful measure that ordinary people can take. We've also met with some of our counterparts across the country. So we met online with the Ulster and North Wales Youth Forums, as well as making our way to Walthamstow Wetlands to meet with the London Wildlife Trust Youth Board. We found it beneficial to collaborate with other groups, drawing inspiration from them and sharing our experience. For example, the London Youth Board has been very good with social media and engaging young people through that, and we want to emulate that. And we'd also like to do some more campaigning, like the North Wales Youth Forum has done, where they created a youth manifesto with other groups across the country and presented it to the Welsh Parliament.
So as part of our natural solutions to the disconnect of people and nature, the Wildlife Trust Young Persons Forum has organised various guided walks led by our young members to young people, young members of the public. Following on a pilot walk last year in Trumpington Meadows, which I and Alex and another member, Jonathan, who can't make it here today, we led. This was, again, a very successful walk. And we, following on from this, led more walks and more guided walks this year. For example, the walk at Brampton Wood, which I and another member, Rufus, who couldn't make it here today. And also, there was another walk this year in the Great Fen, in Wood Walton Fen. I can say that I wasn't at the Wood Walton Fen one, but the walk in Brampton Wood was again a great success with the wonderful Matthew Hayes helped to identify butterflies, and we saw many common species and a slightly rarer one, the purple hair streak. Admittedly, it was very battered and really looking a bit sorry for itself. But all of these walks were a great success. Everyone was very engaged, asked great questions, but to the dismay of many people on the Brampton Wood Walk, everyone was so engaged that there wasn't enough time for a picnic. And so again, as part of our natural solutions, as the Young Persons Forum, was heavily involved in Youth Week. And as part of this, I had the opportunity to co-lead an event with, again, the wonderful Matthew Hayes, who I mentioned previously, at the Zoology Museum. This was a behind-the-scenes tour where we went to see some of the exhibits that are not normally seen, such as the second most painful organism on the planet, a certain kind of wasp, I seem to remember. But I also gave a talk at this event on chalk streams, which is an area that is kind of my main area of passion, and some of the insects that they had, such as mayflies and caddisflies, and how these almost act as the canary for chalk streams, like the canary in the coal mine, if you will, because they have gills and as nymphs, they can't really move around much. So if you've got sewage discharge, as an example, and you get and it depletes the oxygen in the water, these things, they'll die first, basically. So I explained that in this talk, and again, it went down very well, and it was another great success. So I'm going to hand over to...
Along with covering a video and some blogs about mental health, we are collaborating with a comms team where some of our Young People Forum members will be within a conservation podcast all about mental health. We believe that mental health is strongly linked to nature, and within this day and age, mental health is talked about a lot, but unfortunately it is quite hard to see specialists or therapists to talk to. So we wanted to share our stories and say how nature helped us. And on the flip side, we also want to talk about eco-anxiety and everything to do with mental health and nature to raise awareness and hopefully connect with other people that might have similar stories or issues. And if you're interested in that, please look out for it. It'll be coming out soon. I'm not sure when, though.
Okay, you've heard a lot about what we have been doing, but we're here to tell you about our vision for the next 5 years and beyond. We want to meet with more young people's forums across the country and hopefully have more residential trips to meet like-minded individuals and collaborate and connect, really. And this is a big must for us and a growing frontier. We'd like more social media engagement. It's a great way to reach young people who previously weren't engaged with nature and didn't know how to. So off the back of that, we definitely need more fundraising, not only to support our own work, but to help support the amazing things going on all across the Trust and personal projects as well. And also just continuing to engage within our local communities and to be active, whether that's litter picks or our care home visits or school visits and open days. And this is absolutely vital for anything we do going forward, more campaigning. Like Callum said, we have a relatively new government. Things are shifting at the moment, so having our foot in the door couldn't be more important now. Has it changed? It has changed. Perfect. Right. Our vision, ultimately, we'd like to change the attitudes to nature across young people throughout the 3 counties and to the wider country. We want it to be seen as the vital resource for survival, health, and well-being it is in comparison to how it's often written off as uncool or uninteresting to care about by our peers. And we're hoping to do that through the work we do throughout the year, but especially in Youth Week as we're championing youth voice and youth engagement and beyond. We want to encourage young people to engage with nature by making sure it's accessible, whether that's cleaning rivers and streams so they're fit to play and swim in, which to be honest to me sounds like a distant dream, but a dream I hope to see nevertheless, or signposting in reserves so they're designated as spaces for fun, play, and leisure, and the things that attract young people. We want more opportunities for young people in nature. Now, I personally can't talk about this enough, as I'm lucky enough to say that I've been able to take those first steps into turning my passion into a career. I'm proud to announce I'm working for the Trust as one of our Wilder Luton trainees, and it'd be amazing. And it'd be amazing to see more young people flock to nature to know that there is a vital growing sector and it's active. If I can say this, actually. Caitlin, would you like to announce your traineeship for you? Go for it.
I was also very lucky to have a step in this career as I am one of the new Peatland Progress trainees at the Great Fen, so that's also good.
So yeah, we'd like to hear more stories like that. People engaging in nature, more young people, and finally, as Callum said, and I just want to echo that, we want more people in power, more members of the government to listen to what we have to say. Thank you.
I'm just going to do a little shout out. I went to Sophie from, which team is it? From Comms to Wesleywood on Wednesday. So we did one on men's mental well-being. So that will be hitting the main, streaming platform soon. It's very important as men for us to talk about our feelings because we usually don't. So it's always good to open up.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, everyone. And we'll be taking questions now. Right, who do I hand the microphone to?
Okay, well, keep it for the moment because you might need to answer a question or two.
Right, okay.
So does
Yeah,
anybody
there's
have
one.
any questions
Lovely.
for the Young People's Forum before we move on? Oh, there is one. Andrew, just a lady in the audience just there. Oh.
Thank you. Although we're all passionate about wildlife, I've been in a farming family for several hundred years and also passionate about where our food comes from and how we can integrate the two without it being one or the other. Have any of your members or your groups thought about how we integrate farming and wildlife to the benefit of both? Because I see so many fields not growing food any longer, and it really worries me that we need food security in this country.
Does anyone want to take that? I don't mind. Go for it.
So it's important that we can also feed ourselves, but it's not about turning all farmland into wildlife-friendly places, but a lot of land has been farmed on is marginal and is only held up by subsidies, which isn't profitable for the farmers. And so it's sort of making more efficient land use where places best prioritized for nature and places that can actually give return on farming can do that. And then there are also nature-friendly farming where certain techniques are used, where sort of expanded hedgerows or more mixed crops can also help that. It's sort of not, again, it's not a binary. It's using one to help the other.
Do you want to add something as well? Go for it. I'll jump in.
Yeah, and I just might add that people might be aware of the example of Hope Farm, which, afraid it's RSPB, not Wildlife Trust, but it's a great example of how wildlife-friendly farming has contributed to a massive rise in the bird populations. It's Hope Farm in Cambridgeshire, very near Camborne. And also, it's a working farm and agricultural productivity has risen rather than fallen. So it's a great example. Any other questions?
Yes, I hope you can hear me. First of all, that was an absolutely great presentation. Thank you very much indeed, every single one of you. I'm not a politician, but I've been close to politicians in my previous life. And I think one of the reasons politicians don't take notice of young people is that there's a very low percentage of young people who tend to vote in elections. Obviously, there's a prospect of 16-year-olds being allowed to vote soon, which I assume you probably welcome. But how are you going to, as part of your engagement with young people for nature and the future of nature, how are you going to also encourage them to vote?
I think that's a very great question, and yes, voter turnout among young people is often pretty disappointing. I think part of it is explaining how that even if you don't like, say, the two parties who have a chance of winning, then I think explaining how that there's still a point voting, even if it's just spoiling your ballot to show your dissatisfaction. I think that is absolutely crucial. And yes, I think there's no silver bullet to getting more young people into politics. But I think that just explaining a bit more about how people's votes are not wasted, as it can sometimes seem in our electoral system. Do you want anyone else?
Last year, when the election was happening, I also wrote a blog for the Wildlife Trust encouraging young people to vote. because it's sort of a self-perpetuating cycle that people don't feel like they're listened to, so they don't vote, and then they're not listened to because the politicians don't see a point in it. So yeah, try and emphasise that point, that you do need to express your opinion if you want that opinion to be listened to.
Okay, I'm really sorry. We'll have to hold questions at the moment, but please do feel free to chat through with the Young People's Forum again at refreshments or at lunchtime, because they will be in there ready to answer all your questions. So,
Thank you so much to the Young People's Forum. I mean, both a brilliant presentation, but also brilliant answers to your questions, which I think is just as impressive. And I have to say, I'm also extremely impressed by how on message with the new strategic plan their presentation was, which was brilliant. So we've definitely got a hit there. So now we are moving into the final presentation before a well-earned coffee break, and we are very happy to have Matt Johnson, our North Hants Conservation Manager, who's going to come up and give you a little bit of a preview of the site that many of us are going to visit this afternoon at Old Sulhay. So, Matt.
Thank you very much. Yes, I've got the hard act of both following the Young People's Forum and fitting in a brief introduction to the history, natural history, importance and possible future of Old Sulhay Nature Reserve in the 14 minutes before your coffee break. So, here we go. Hopefully some of you know it. For some of you, this will be a new nature reserve to visit, and definitely worth a visit many times a year. Possibly one of our most diverse reserves in North Hants, 86 hectares in total, but within that fits bluebell-rich ancient woodlands, species-rich limestone grasslands with orchids, many wildflowers, scrubs supporting a good array of bird life, some really important early successional grasslands with fairly rare flora, and possibly even rarer, a marsh area containing a rare geological feature. But we'll start off with a bit of history, go a bit in time. I'll whiz through the first few centuries, but first recorded as woodland in the 13th century, so we're pretty sure this is an ancient woodland that has always been there. It broadly stayed the same until the 19th century, when stone pit quarrying began. Then between the 30s and 60s, the site was fairly transformed by the large-scale quarrying and railway works, particularly around Ringhaw. But nature then moved in when the quarrying ceased, and by 1973, the woodland was designated a triple SI, and the Trust acquired the Old Sulhay Forest and the adjacent stone pit quarry back in 2001, extended the reserve to include Ringhaw in 2002, and then undertook the Samox limestone grassland creation in 2003. So, back in the sort of 40s and 50s, this is what the site looked, very different. You can see some of the large-scale quarrying down there on the left-hand corner, and the woodland looking a little bit different today, which is now how it looks, surrounded by lots of green, but you can pick out the woodlands, the quarries, and the grassland sites as well. So diving a little bit into each part of the site in turn, as we've said, Sulhay Forest, been a woodland for a long, long time. The main ride that you can see going straight through the middle was probably put in some point in the 19th century. The main compartment is called King's Oaks compartment, and that's where trees there were reserved for the Navy. In World War I, a large number of trees were removed. And then World War II, it had the slightly strange lifespan of having an area of prison of war huts that you can see along the top northern boundary. Subsequently, some of those buildings were then used as housing by local people, and even as, for a little short period, a school. So you could say that North Hants was very much ahead of the game when it came to forest schools. And then, obviously, surrounding the woodland, the quarrying hasn't quite left it untouched. There's quite a steep drop-off straight from the northern edge. You can see the quarrying there. But to the south, the quarries have then been reclaimed by nature and absolutely teeming with wildlife. one of which is the Stone Pit Quarry. So a small stone quarry in the 19th century by the roadside turned into the whole area being quarried in the 20th century, but since the 1970s it's been abandoned to nature, and as you can see from the photos, really sort of interesting array of scrub, bare ground and wildflowers, which I'll talk about a bit later on. Then moving down into the south of the site, we have Ringhor, spelt Dringhor in the 13th century, so the woodland there has been around for quite a long time as well, again probably ancient, although not quite as diverse due to the quarrying in the last century. You can see, I found this photo on the internet when I was putting this talk together. It says it's of O'Toole-Hay. I think that could be our field station and Samex Hill behind. I'm not totally sure, so anyone, any thoughts, let me know. But that's kind of the scale of quarrying and railways that were in place during that time period. And the grasslands there were essentially used for processing the iron ore. So the calcareous deposits that we've got there are what came out of that process and of what have created the geology that's led to the wildflowers flourishing ever since. So that happened until the 1970s. Samex Hill slightly different. We believe that was a calcareous limestone grassland back in the 1800s, but then ploughed up and only returned to grassland by the Trust recently. Just a quick map showing you some of the quarried areas, so fairly extensive in the woodland, and you can see the extent of the railway lines particularly onto the calcining banks. This is the original train. If you look very closely, the name of the train is Ringhor, that you can just about make up on there, so that was the train. So, moving swiftly on to give you a broad sort of overview of the ecology of Old Suley Nature Reserve. We kind of split it into about 5 main areas: the woodlands, the quarry stone pit, the Ringhor wood, Samex calcareous restoration grassland, and the main Ringhor grassland. But in terms of managing the site, it's actually split into 15 different compartments. And yes, one of those compartments is the car park, but I've known many a botany course meet there and still be in the car park come lunchtime, given the variety of wildflowers that you can find. So, Suley Forest, really important, ancient woodland, your typical broadleaf ash oak woodland, but some rare small leaf limes in there. Springtime really is the best time to visit. It's absolutely awash with the bluebells, the wood anemones, and the ramsons. But these big open rides, really important as well, both for butterflies and things like greater butterfly orchids. And particularly last few years, really noticed is a great site for toothwort as well. In terms of our management, we focus our hazel coppice on these 12 coppice coops alongside the main ride here, and also by mowing and creating glades along the main ride and what we call mucky ride here as well. But also we do tree thinning, taking out some of the sycamore, retaining as much deadwood as we can and protecting our veteran trees. Management and the wildlife in Stone Pit is quite different. This is really very much a mosaic of grassland and scrub. In recent years, been supporting nightingales, but potentially most important for its tiny basil thyme and other early successional plants. The mosaic of topography, of wildflowers, of scrub, really great for many insects, particularly things like dingy grizzled skipper and green tiger beetle. The challenge is the large number of silver birch and clematis, which are threatening to take over the grassland. It's possibly our most challenging reserve to manage, and we sort of have to basically have a four-pronged way of attack. We graze it or even browse it as well. We've recently, as well as our rare breed sheep and Highland cattle, we've introduced mouflon, so a very ancient breed of sheep with these magnificent horns. So they're doing a lot of browsing, keeping on top of that scrub. We've also had contractors and volunteers clearing scrub, tree popping, so pulling out the birch, and also scraping areas back, so completely resetting succession and giving space for those early successional plants to come in. Further down, we're back into the woodlands, so Ringhor wood, another remnant, again an oak ash woodland. Originally was a SSI, but became denotified in 1985, but still a very great woodland. And some of these open areas, Harebell Corner in particular, this year really looking stunning. The amount of harebells that we had there are great. And again, we've been opening up scallops into the edge of the woodland to encourage butterflies and have that open space that they really need. Moving into later the year, the Ringhor grasslands are really worth a visit. Been really spectacular this year in the last couple of years. We've got 3 main fields: Waldens, Calcining Banks, and Nassington. And as well as the sort of the areas of scrub, it's the whole array of things like pyramidal orchids, common spotted orchids, clustered bellflower that we find there, the scabious, that are really worth seeing. Again, attracting a whole range of insects, invertebrates. These areas are also grazed by our rare breed sheep and cattle, and our volunteers and staff really get stuck into the scrub and the brush cutting areas of Calamagrostis that is starting to take over in some places, as well as laying hedges. And then down in the marshy area, not particularly well known, but we've got an area containing tufa, so sort of calcareous limestone deposits, really rare geological feature. And this area is probably as close as you get in Northamptonshire to a stage 0 stream. So really sort of natural, exciting area. And then finally, our newest part of the site is Sammocks Hill. So this was limestone creation back in 2003, formerly arable fields. The Trust acquired them, did soil tests, sprayed off what was previously there, harrowed and rolled it, and then created a really sort of perfect seed bed for adding seed. So did it as a bit of an experiment. The eastern field, we had green hay from Stamford. The west field was collected seed from places like Collie Weston and Barnet. And they've really come into their own over the last 5 or 10 years. We managed them through the winter with cows and sheep. But yeah, really great array of wildflowers there. They're starting to look fairly natural. And yeah, things like common lizard also found. But we couldn't do this alone, and the volunteers there are really essential. So our Sulhay group only started a few years ago in 2022, but have become an essential part of the management of the site. We have at least 15 really keen volunteers weekly on a Friday, and they've made a huge difference. They've started tackling forgotten parts of the site, as well as helping out across some of the other nature reserves. And the photos here just show some of the work they've been really getting into. And sort of the hours they've put in is really amazing. We worked out that last winter was 1,650 volunteer hours across the site. And that included replacing 100 fence posts as well. So they've, making a real difference. Alongside our volunteers, the other real hard workers are the livestock. So we made a decision to take the grazing management of the reserve back in-house in 2020. Previously, we had graziers coming in. And although that was an extra resource, it has given us better control. It's a combination of sheep and cattle, and more recently, mouflon. We had to improve the infrastructure so we can do things like TB testing, but we started with restoration grazing in 2020 and then moved to winter grazing from 2021. Predominantly, the cattle come up from the Nen Valley, where they spend their summer in around November and then graze through to February. And the results in recent years have spoken for themselves. The management we can't do without monitoring, so we do our sort of typical rapid grasslands and our woodland conditioning monitoring here. We've had an MVC survey to give us a real baseline of what's going on, and then there's various species surveys that go around as well. 10 red-listed breeding birds on site, things like cuckoo, missel thrush, nightingale, turtle dove. Butterflies, possibly our best reserve for butterflies in Northamptonshire. Last year, over 1,000 butterflies were recorded on the transects across 27 different species. So, in my last few minutes, I'll talk a little bit about the future of the site. Plenty of challenges. Whether climate change or scrub is the biggest challenge. It depends on the day. But yeah, the wetter winters when we're having our livestock up there can be challenging. The Calamagrostis does seem to be spreading into the grassland. With these, what looks like crop circles is our attempt to sort of brush cut it and encourage the cattle in to graze it back and really get into it. And then we're sort of dealing with the funding of the site, battling with stewardship. Deer numbers are quite high, but there's lots of opportunities too. At the micro level, our Carrick grasslands are great, but in the summer heat waves, they do get really hot. And particularly on Sammocks, we don't have much shade, so we've conversely started to introduce scrub back into areas of Sammocks Hill, so we can have some sort of cooler, more shaded areas for insects to take shelter in, basically. We're working with university students to monitor both those temperature changes and the insects that are found there. And then finally, at the macro scale, this is Old Sulhay Nature Reserve. If we add in the other important sites, the national nature reserves, the local wildlife sites in nature and woodlands around Rockingham Forest Park and other local wildlife sites, you start to see the importance of the whole area for wildlife. And hopefully, going forwards, we can really start to link those areas up. So we're we're talking with the landowners to the west in Rockingham Forest Park and helping them come up with a stewardship scheme to create sort of about 80 hectares of fairly uninteresting pasture into sort of a grassland scrub mosaic that will both link our ancient woodlands with theirs and will help them hopefully with the grazing going forwards. And then there's quite a bit of land to the east at Nassington that's fairly unmanaged at the moment that we'd really like to get involved with as well. So if anyone's got any contacts with landowners in Nassington that they can point in our direction, then please let us know. So thank you for listening. The Nature Reserve doesn't manage itself. It's through the work of our hard-working staff, our even harder-working volunteers, and possibly our even harder-working livestock that keep it in the great shape that it has been over the last few years. And I hope you look forward to your visit there this afternoon. Thank you. A very ancient breed of Mediterranean sheep, so potentially what all our sheep are descended from over the last 2,000 years is from a mouflon. So we've reintroduced them because they browse rather than graze and improve their management. If you're going on the walk, there's a chance of spotting one.
Matt, thank you ever so much indeed for packing in a huge amount of really valuable background information that will make your visit this afternoon even more enjoyable, I'm sure. And we are bang on time with coffee intervals, which is great. Laurie, is there anything you want to say at this point?
No, just that you've all seen where the refreshment tables are, so please do feel free to pop along, grab yourself a coffee and some biscuits, whatever. But if I can ask everyone to please be back on time for 12 o'clock AGM start, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
move down here. You can sit if you want. That's all right. I didn't want to disturb. It's nothing personal. Move around sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you ever so much, everybody, for making your way back so swiftly for our 12 o'clock start for the AGM for the afternoon. So without further ado, I will pass over to our chair, Dr. Hilary Allison, to chair the AGM.
Good afternoon, everyone. So that's better, sorry. Use the on-off switch. Thank you. I'm afraid you got me again. Unfortunately, our president, Sir Partha Dasgupta, is unable to attend this AGM, which is unfortunate. And so, as chair, but also in line with the Articles of Association, I will be leading the AGM on behalf of the Trust. So it's my very great pleasure to welcome you all to the 2025 Annual General Meeting for the Wildlife Trust for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire. And on behalf of the trustees and the staff, thank you once again for joining us both here in person and online. And thank you also to everyone who gave an amazingly inspiring presentation this morning. I mean, there's so much to be done in our area, but it's fantastic to see the dedication of everyone involved in the Trust, including you, our members, to ensure that wildlife has every opportunity to thrive. So on to AGM business. I'm going to hand over to Laurie for the housekeeping side of things.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you to those who have submitted questions in advance. We shall answer them under any other business. Those in the room should feel free to ask questions during the AGM, and those who are streaming may do so by emailing agm@wildlifebcn.org. We might not be able to answer them all today, but staff or trustees will respond directly over the coming week. At various points, Hilary will ask members either to propose or second a resolution. To do so, please raise your hand and say your name clearly and in full. One of my colleagues will then read out the name of the first person to do so for the minutes of today's meeting. And now I will pass over to Michael Krause.
Good morning, everybody. We've received 31 apologies for this meeting. That includes Sir Partha Dasgupta, our President, Sir Michael Allen, the Vice President, Jan Davis, who's one of our honorary officers, Caroline Brown and Matt Hayes, who are both trustees. Now, voting in the room will be by a show of hands. Members who are absent or who are streaming the meeting have had the chance to vote by proxy, and I, as Vice Chair and nominated proxy, will read out the totals for each resolution after it's been seconded. If the vote is clear, we won't count hands that are raised. If any of them are closed, we will.
Thank you. So moving on to item 3, which is around the minutes of the meeting, the AGM held on the 19th of October 2024. So the draft minutes of last year's meeting have been posted on the website, and I hope you've had a chance to read them in detail. Members who were at the last AGM are asked to approve the minutes as a true record of the meeting. So resolution 1 is to approve these minutes. I need a proposer, if I may, please. William, thank you. And I need a seconder, please. Thank you. The gentleman up there. Okay. Yep. Thank you very much indeed. Can I have a show of hands, please, for approval of the minutes? Thank you. That's 4. Any against? I think that's carried. And I'll ask Michael for the proxy tally.
Yep, that's 111 for, no one against, and 6 abstentions.
Thank you. So we can now move on to the presentation of the annual report, which is me, if I can just find my notes. Thank you. So I'm sure you've all read our the highlights or the impact report. That's the new name for our annual report. I just wanted to cover a few of the highlights. This is the last year that we're going to be reporting on our previous 5-year plan, and so next year, when you read our annual report, you will notice some further improvements in how we are going to be holding ourselves more to account to you, our supporters, in terms of the impact that we've achieved. So 2024-25 was quite a challenging year for us, but also for many other environmental organisations. But we have achieved some important milestones in the mission to bring people closer to nature and make our 3 counties richer in wildlife. For example, thanks to careful management of suitable habitat, we've brought back lost wildlife to many of our reserves. You heard about the reintroduction of beavers absent in the Nene Valley for at least 400, possibly longer, years. And that's really caught the imagination of the public. The beavers have lost no time in making their mark on the woodland around at the back of the shopping centre. And thanks to the wonders of camera traps, we've all been able to follow their nocturnal adventures and, most excitingly, recently, the growth of their family with the birth of beaver kits. But we have also reintroduced many waterfoals lost to the region for over 20 years to the Nene wetlands as well. The completion of the acquisition of Strawberry Hill, which Brian mentioned earlier, is an amazing achievement. It's a wonderful place, a rewilded farm full of songbirds. That was the culmination of nearly 4 years painstaking work by the Trust team and was the result of our biggest ever appeal, which was not without some risks, it has to be said, but now we can sit back and enjoy the fact that it is now within our stewardship. And as well as protecting habitats like Strawberry Hill, we've made huge strides in connecting and creating new wetland habitats in the Great Fen in Cambridgeshire, between Woodwalton and Holme Fens, through the Peatland Progress Project, which will in time enrich the land with wildlife and lock in carbon. Our work to bring people and nature closer has been sustained and enhanced in terms of visits to schools and work with community groups and supporting communities who want to improve their own local green spaces. We have actually we have brought into contact with the Trust over 6,000 school children and another 6,000 people of all ages as a result of these community events. And the runaway success of the new Northants Nature Girls group outlined in the impact report shows how such groups can rapidly gain their own momentum very quickly. We have also played our part in the work of the National Wildlife Trust movement, and we hosted a ministerial visit by Mary Cray, the Environment Minister, just ahead of the government's announcement to allow wild beaver releases under licence. And we hope there was some correlation between those two events, having, as she was introduced to our own beavers at Rushton Lakes. And then sites such as Trumpington Meadows have been used as national exemplars of how development and nature can work together and not be in conflict, despite government messaging to the contrary sometimes. So that was a very brief highlight, very brief highlights. And I finally, before I come to a close, I just wanted to put on record my very, very sincere thanks to all those individual members who have recognised the trust in their wills, all those who have contributed towards our appeals, no matter how large or small your donation was, and all those local businesses who've been supporting us, as well as all of our funders and grant givers. And without you, none of these achievements for the past year would have been possible. So thank you very much. And that's my report summarising the key elements of last year's activity. And now there's an opportunity, I think, just for any quick questions, if there are any. No? Okay, thank you very much indeed. So I now need to move to Resolution 2, which is to approve the annual report of the Board of Trustees. This is proposed by Council, so I need a seconder for that. Thank you, Martin. And I need a show of hands in the room for the adoption of the report. Thank you very much. That looks a majority. And
the proxy vote is 116 for and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to ask if there were anybody who didn't want us to approve the annual report. No, great. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 5, which is presentation and adoption of the accounts and auditors report. I'm going to ask Hannah, as our honorary treasurer, to run through the key points for us.
Right, so thank you very much. I've got to stand in a zone, so I'm in the camera zone, but I've been sitting down too long today, as I'm sure you have too. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Hannah Bartram. I'm the treasurer for the Trust, and my commentary today relates to the financial year of 24-25. So this slide gives you a financial overview for that year, and as you can see, our total income was actually just short of £14 million. And as it shows, our income came from 3 sort of areas. Income is split across 3 areas. So of the third that came from grants, partnerships and business activities, we had 51 different funders, supporters through the grants process. Partnerships is where we've been selling our services, our conservation expertise to other organisations. And business activities include things like land rents, events and merchandise. 30% of our income came from donations, legacies and memberships, and as Hilary has said, we are eternally grateful for those. That forms a really critical element of our income. And then the final third for this year comes from Trumpeting Meadows, from something called a commuted sum, which is a very user-friendly term. It's essentially a one-time lump sum payment, which is paid by the developer, in this case to the Trust, to fund the ongoing costs of managing Trumpeting Meadows, and that's for an 80-year period. So, as I said, we're very grateful to you for your continued contributions. In terms of expenditure, just about 7.7 million, and 3/4 of our expenditure goes on managing and maintaining our nature reserves, and we've heard very eloquently today about how successful we're doing that, but also working with others to improve the conservation value of areas outside of our reserves. And I wrote several things about beavers and voles, but they've all been touched on already. And I haven't seen the 2mm invertebrate in Potton, which is where I live, so I need to go and find it. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned today, actually, is that we're also very involved in the development of local nature recovery strategies, they're called, which are a critical plank of the government's commitment to nature, and the Trust obviously has lots and lots to contribute to that, and we've talked about planning today, amongst other things. We've invested in education and community outreach, and you've heard about Team Wilder. In total, I looked at the figures, we've reached more than 12,500 people of all ages through our staff-led face-to-face activities. I checked my notes from last year and I reported it was 9,500, so that's quite a considerable increase, so that's fantastic. Just to add, so this has been referenced as well, and I think I mentioned it at the AGM last year, we were in the process of selling the buildings, the farmhouse and buildings at Strawberry Hill. That actually completed in April, so outside of the financial period I'm reporting on. But just to let you know, it went through generating an income of 1.3 million and a net income of circa £300,000. Looking forward, so there are, of course, challenges, opportunities. So economically, there's still a great deal of uncertainty in the world. People's disposable income has obviously still been impacted by the ongoing cost of living crisis, high rates of inflation, high rates of interest, and the like. And at the same time, of course, our costs are continuing to rise by a higher rate than we can increase income streams. I think Hilary alluded to the Trust recruiting and retaining good staff, and we have to pay the market rate for the skill sets that we need to deliver what we do through the Trust, so that's another kind of challenge. Something which has come out, perhaps maybe not just this year, but is increasing competition for grants. So data collected by the Association of Charitable Foundations, which is ACF that you can see referenced on the slide, indicates there's significantly more competition for grants. The number of applications has gone up whilst the amount of money has gone down. And so there's been an increase of 30 to 50% increase in applicants, and some charities and foundations are reporting a doubling of applications. So there's, again, challenges there for us. In terms of opportunities, so it's a really, really exciting time. Hilary's introduced our Wilder Future, the next 5-year strategy, so there's lots to do in there. And we're constantly looking at how to develop new ways of approaching fundraising and diverse income streams to offset our higher costs. And just to explain some of those, so Species Farm, which you'll be aware of, we're now registered to sell carbon credits, which is fantastic. We've already sold some to approved buyers and are optimistic there are potentially large-scale buyers in the pipeline. Our 50% share in Muchwood Green Burials is continuing to generate a really good rate of return on our investment, and we're looking for suitable sites across all 3 counties. And we now have 3 habitat sites that have been enhanced for nature, where we are generating biodiversity net gain units, as they're called, and we are selling those to developers, which in turn is paying for our costs. So we're constantly looking at how we improve our digital marketing and new ways of support, alongside obviously keeping strong control over costs. I don't think I've got another slide, but just to say, in summary, there's just so much important work going on. So trustees have approved another investment budget for 25-26, which is obviously this year, and we're aiming to move to a balanced budget within the next 2 years. We do keep spend and forecast under regular review, as the executive team will tell you, and we look to take remedial action to stay within budget wherever possible, and we do have designated funds at our disposal to cover any inflationary costs which cannot be avoided through operational mitigation. So on behalf of the Trust and my fellow trustees, some of who are here today, can I take this opportunity to thank you all for your ongoing support, and I hope you're proud of what your Wildlife Trust is achieving. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. So we are now moving on to Resolution 3, which is to approve the annual accounts and auditors report. This resolution is proposed by Council. I would like a seconder, if I may, please. Gentleman there, Peter, thank you very much. May I have a show of hands in favour in the room? Thank you. Any opposed? No, thank you. Michael?
And yeah, again, the proxy votes, 115 for and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. So the annual accounts and auditors report are approved. Moving on to item 6, which is the appointment of the auditors, and I'm going to hand back to Hannah just to give us a bit of a narrative about the auditors.
Yes, so I think I brought to your attention at this event last year. We were in the process of tendering for new auditors. Price Bailey was successful, and the trustees have been really impressed by the thoroughness of their approach in their first year of working with us. So we are happy to recommend to you that they continue as the Trust's auditors for the next financial year.
Thank you. So the reappointment of Price Bailey as auditors is proposed by Council. Again, may I have a seconder, please? William, thank you very much indeed. May I have a show of hands for in the room? Thank you. Any abstentions or votes against? Sorry, any votes against? I'm not asking about abstentions because I think votes against is probably more important. Thank you. And Michael for the proxy.
Yep, we have 111 for, 1 against and 5 abstentions.
Thank you. So, moving on to item 7, elections. So for those standing for election or reappointment today, I'm going to ask each of them to stand up as I introduce them so that you can refamiliarise yourselves with everyone. The first item is around re-election of council members. We actually don't have any council members due for re-election this year. However, we do have, in terms of item 8, a formal election of a co-opted trustee. And they're standing for formal election, having been co-opted at the last AGM. Rainer, would you like to stand up, please? Thank you very much. So Dr. Rainer Schulte, he's the head of flow cytometry at the Cambridge Institute for Medical Research. He graduated as a biochemist in 2003 at the University of Jena in Germany, and in 2007 obtained a PhD in immunology from the University of Göttingen in Germany. And Rainer has a great interest in public engagement and community science, and he joined the Wildlife Trust Camborne Work Party and became a volunteer warden in 2022. So great credentials, and he certainly speaks up about volunteering on the council with great regularity, which is fantastic. So resolution 5 is to approve the election to council of Dr. Rainer Schulte. This is proposed by council. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Martin. May I have a show of hands in the room? Thank you. Any against? No, Michael?
And we have 113 for, 1 against and 3 abstentions.
Thank you. So moving on to item 9, we have one member of council who has stood down between the last AGM and this one. Kim Dunn stood down in June 25, and she served as a trustee from March 23 to that date. And I wanted to record a great vote of thanks to Kim on behalf of council and staff. So moving on to re-election of officers, item 10. I am going to actually stop chairing at this point and hand over to Michael as vice chair for reasons that are obvious, I think.
Thank you, Hilary. So the next item is the election of chair. Council proposes the re-election of Dr. Hilary Allison, who is present here. I won't ask her to stand up because she's been doing that quite a while. Hilary's spent most of her career advocating for the protection, restoration, management and expansion of woodlands, and includes 25 years at the Woodland Trust and more recently as a forestry commissioner. She's been a trustee since 2021. And resolution 6 is to approve the re-election of Hilary as chair. That's proposed by council. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. And a show of hands in the room. All those in favour? Anyone against? You put your hand down then, Martin, or were you against? No. And online, we have 114 in favour, no one against, and 3 abstentions. So you have to continue and carry on, I'm afraid. Back to you.
Thank you. Right, it's my turn to reciprocate, Michael. We move on to item 11, which is the election of the vice chair. So council is proposing the re-election of Michael Kraus, who's present. I won't ask him to stand up either. Michael has worked in nature conservation charities, including Fauna and Flora International, Plant Life, RSPB, and the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust for over 20 years in roles including fundraising and senior management, and he's been a trustee since 2023. So resolution 7 is to propose the re-election of Michael as vice chair, which is proposed by council. May I have a seconder, please? Let's have somebody, gentleman at the top there. Thank you. Oh, in the green shirt, just for a little green jumper, just for a little bit of variation. Nick Hammond. Thank you. That's very good. Can we have a show of hands in the room, please? Thank you. Any against? No. Thank you. And Michael, your tallies for yourself.
Yes, we have 112 for, a reassuring 2 against, and 3 abstentions.
Thank you. Right. Moving on to the election of our Honorary Secretary. Council is proposing the re-election of Jan Davis as Honorary Secretary. She's not present here today, unfortunately. She sends her apologies. But Jan is a very experienced human resources leader, specialising in developing managers in complex global environments. I could do with her help. Since taking early retirement, she has focused on volunteering and is also Chair of Trustees of the Hunts Community Cancer Network. And she's been a trustee of this trust since 2020. So Resolution 8 is to approve the election of Jan Davis as Honorary Secretary. This is proposed by Council. May we have a seconder, please? Thank you, that gentleman up there in the dark blue jumper. That would be great. Okay, thank you very much indeed. A show of hands in the room, please, for Jan's re-election. Thank you. Any against? Michael.
And we have 112 in favour and 5 abstentions in the proxy.
Thank you. Moving on to item 13, the election of our Honorary Treasurer, and Council is proposing the re-election of Hannah. She's just laughing at the fact that she's been associated with a very fine-looking Highland cow on screen.
I try not to read into this.
Well, anything to introduce a little levity into the AGM is good, I think. So we're proposing her re-election as council. Hannah's has spent her professional career in the public policy and environment sector. She's became a trustee in 2019 and was elected as treasurer in 2022. So Resolution 9 is to approve the election of Hannah as our honorary treasurer. This is proposed by council, and may we have a seconder, please? That gentleman in the front row, thank you. You're making life easier. I will take others. I'm trying to spread the seconding around the room as best I can. I'll come to you later, sir, if you wouldn't mind. May we have a show of hands in the room, please? Thank you very much indeed. Any against? No, thank you. Michael?
Yep, the proxy vote is 114 for and 3 abstentions.
Thank you. So you're duly re-elected, Hannah. Thank you. Excellent. So item 14 relates to Resolution 10, which is the election of the chair of the Conservation, Education and Community Committee, and the council is proposing the re-election of Professor Sam Brockington, who is present. Sam, would you like to stand up? Thank you. Sam is Professor of Evolution in the Department of Plant Sciences at the University of Cambridge. He's curator of the Cambridge University Botanic Garden, and he's been a trustee since 2017 and chair of the Conservation, Education and Community Committee since 2023. So Resolution 10 is to approve his election as chair of the Conservation, Education and Community Committee. This is proposed by council. May we have a seconder, please? Thank you, sir, in the white short sleeve shirt. Thank you. That's very good. Thank you. Okay. May we have a show of hands in the room for? Thank you. Any against? Michael.
And we have 113 in favour and 4 abstentions.
Thank you. Moving on to item 16, which is one that gives me particular pleasure, is council is proposing the election of my predecessor, Professor William Stevens, as Vice President. William, would you like to just stand up so people reacquaint themselves with you? Thank you. Professor William Stevens is an ecological scientist by background, and he spent 32 years at Cranfield University in Bedfordshire, specialising in the effect of climate on plant growth, and was head of the Institute of Water and Environment from 1999 to 2006. He chaired the University Board for Energy and Environment, responsible for Cranfield's environmental performance, and William was a trustee of Beds, Cams and North Hants Wildlife Trust from 2014, serving as vice chairman from 2016 to 2018 and chairman from 2020 to 2024. So the resolution 11 is to approve the election of Professor William Stevens as our vice president, or one of our vice presidents, because we do have a few. And this is proposed by council. May I have a seconder, please? Oh, right. Thank you. Thank you again. Yes, thank you. And may I have a show of hands in the room, please? Fantastic. Any objections? No? Thank you. Michael.
And once again, we have 113 for and 4 abstentions.
Thank you. So welcome William as one of our new vice presidents. Thank you. Great. Okay, so that's a lot of the official business of the Trust concluded, and we now come to an equally important part of the agenda, which is the announcement of awards, volunteer awards for 2025. And obviously, we have mentioned several times, but it deserves repetition, that the Trust relies on the dedicated support of a wide range of volunteers, including many of you here today. And our awards honour volunteers whose contribution has been particularly outstanding. And the awards take the form of a £75 worth of books. 2 of the award winners can't be here today, but I can at least tell you a little bit about them. So the first set of awards is for the Richenda Huxley Award, which recognises an outstanding contribution to any aspect of the work of the Trust. And this year we've awarded this award to 2 volunteers, Gail Anscombe and Phil Bray. So Gail has volunteered in Northamptonshire since 2009, and for a large part of that she's gone out weekly with the North Hants Practical Reserves Volunteers team, and since 2020 she has dedicated, which is amazing, over 400 hours to helping put over 60 years of reserve paperwork in order. I think anyone deserves an award for that. This has involved coming in twice a week for about 6 hours in total, going through multiple files for each nature reserve, checking for duplicates, disposing of any necessary, sorting each reserve folder into management plans, maps, species records, habitat management works, etc. And without Gail's invaluable efforts, the scanning exercise, presumably that's to digitise those records, would have been impossible. So well done to Gail. And Phil Bray is the second award winner, and he's been a valuable volunteer on Bedfordshire work parties for many, many years. And the tribute here says he's hardworking and reliable, with reserve staff knowing that they can give him any task and he will work until it's completed. Despite his age, staff struggle to keep up with him when working together. Presumably he's still out working on the reserves now. Phil has been crucial as well in the maintenance of Trust equipment, repairing damaged rakes, and delivering boxes of kindling for the fire and Kelly kettles. I must say, Kelly kettles are one of my favourite bits of equipment. I do own one, and it's fantastic fun. If you don't have one, I would seriously consider acquiring one. So unfortunately, neither Gail nor Phil are able to be here today. We're going to send Gail her books, and Phil has very kindly donated his book award money back to the Trust. So on behalf of the Trust, I'd like to thank them hugely for their dedication, and a round of applause, I think, is required. Okay. So moving on to the next award, which is the Oliver Rackham Award. This recognises an individual who has demonstrated outstanding service to wildlife in our area through conservation, monitoring or research. This year, the trustees have decided to make 2 awards to Martin Baker and Peter Pilbeam. Martin was volunteer warden at Ladyswood and Raveleywood from January 1986 to 2024, completing practical and monitoring work as well as supporting work at nearby Upwood Meadows. Martin supports the Trust to local people via organised walks and on-site meetings and busy weekends. He continues a very long-running annual early purple orchid monitoring scheme at Raveleywood, as well as being part of the Upwood Meadows green-winged orchid monitoring group. And Martin was for many years a member of the Trust's Conservation, Education and Community Committee and served for 6 years as a trustee to 2016. He has been a very supportive advocate for the Trust's fundraising team, and all staff appreciate his unfailing enthusiasm and positivity. So Martin, please come forward to receive your prize.
I did a bit of digging and I discovered my first membership card was in the spring of 1986. I've still got it, obviously, and in an envelope, and I've just carried on from there. We formed the local group with Derek Neiman in the autumn of 86, and I have the greatest pleasure telling you all that our local group is thriving to this day from 1986. I think that's a fabulous, long-lived local group, so I'm particularly proud. And the people who have made it, some of which are sadly not with us anymore, but Tim's carrying on as chair, and I thank him for that. I've had a wonderful time with the Trust. You have been the most wonderful, supportive team of enthusiastic wildlife people. It's been brilliant. I've been so well looked after over the last 39 years. I thank you for your continued support and the love that you show me on a daily basis. So thank you all very much indeed.
Just before I move on to the next award, just to say the photograph that you've just seen was a picture of Martin with the late, great Oliver Rackham. Oliver Rackham was on the left, but they do seem to be quite similar in appearance. They could be twins. But that's a lovely memento. Thank you. So moving on to the other recipient of the Oliver Rackham Award. This is awarded to Peter Pilbeam, known to many of you, I'm sure. Peter began volunteering with the Wildlife Trust in 1977 and has given hundreds, probably thousands, I would imagine, of hours of his time, helping both the reserve team and the monitoring and research team, as well as serving as a trustee in the 1980s. And since 1979, he's been reserve warden at Doghouse Grove, making him the longest-serving, still current warden in Cambridgeshire. As well as working across many Cambridgeshire reserves as a practical volunteer, he is an expert mammal surveyor, and with the ecology group volunteers, he's led numerous bat surveys across several nature reserves, and he's a regular licensed dormouse surveyor at Brampton Wood. Peter regularly runs wildlife training workshops for the Trust, including mammal tracks and signs, small mammal identification, and owl pellet dissection. So Peter, please come forward to have your award.
Right, first of all, thank you to the trustees for this award. I must admit I was a bit overwhelmed because I'm not used to getting awards and I hate having my photograph taken, incidentally. One thing that was not mentioned in my biopic was going back to the original office in Bateman Street, when the trust had one half a person and a small committee called the Field Committee, which I was on for a short time. They also missed out the fact that I was involved in the first purchase of the first bit of the Great Fen project. And that's the only time I've ever signed a, what was it called? When we bought the reserve, £5.5 million, I think. I quite liked signing for that. Otherwise, I can't think of anything else to say, except I'm feeling rather jet-lagged, because I've ignored British wildlife for the last 2 weeks, and I've been watching jaguars kill anacondas. So thanks again to the Trust, and good afternoon.
Thank you very much. You are all keeping admirably to time. I think we might even be heading for an early lunch if there aren't too many questions at the end, but let's not anticipate that. So our next award is the John Smith Award, which was constituted in 2017 in memory of the Trust's much loved and missed former Great Fen Restoration Officer, who was a passionate conservationist. And the award recognises volunteers who have gone the extra mile in their work for the Trust, and having a significant impact on a particular aspect of the Trust's work. This year, the trustees decided to make one award to Keith Jones. And Keith started volunteering at the Summerlays Visitor Centre when it opened in 2022, and has since been an invaluable help to the team. He is their main volunteer who has turned up every Saturday morning to help in the centre and for events. The team has said that they can always rely on him to be there to assist them and to welcome visitors to the reserve. He has also started recently volunteering with the reserves team over the winter, helping with work parties at the Neen wetlands. And Keith is a great asset to both teams. So Keith, would you like to come forward to receive your award?
Just a few words. You all look starving, so I won't go on too long. I'd just like to thank the Trust, obviously, for this award. I'm very grateful, but also quite embarrassed. I know there are a lot of people here and elsewhere who give a lot of time to the Trust, but hopefully I can contribute something. No matter how much time I do give to the Trust, it's far more than outweighed by the benefits. I mean, it's great working with a dedicated team in the Nen Valley who have a vision for the future of the Nen Valley reserves, and I think that's fantastic. And also we've heard today a lot about the Trust's wider visions, and particularly from the Youth Forum. I mean, I think it's wonderful what they do, and they are the future. And I should say that I have had the unpleasant experience of winding up a charity which had been active for 70 years and in the end failed because we couldn't attract new young members. So it is very important that we do get young people involved. And finally, I'd just like to thank the Trust for investing in my training. When I retired, I didn't expect to be getting a city and guilds in tree felling at the age of 70. So thanks again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we move to the final item on the agenda, which is any other business. And We asked if there were any questions that members wished to raise prior to the meeting, and we have received 2 questions. I won't read out all of the details on the screen, but they're up here for you to see. This relates to Pegston Hills Reserve, and I'm going to ask Matt Jackson as Conservation Director if he would like to come and provide a brief response to the question that's been raised about Pegston Hills.
Oh, brilliant. Does that one work? Oh. Sorry, I'll hold it a bit further away. Yes, the good news is they're ready for lunch at any time, so we don't need to spin out the questions to fill up the time. They've been warned we're running a little bit ahead. In terms of Pegston, yes, for those who don't know Pegston, shame on you. Everybody should know Pegston. It's just the most amazing nature reserve. And the Trust acquired the SSSI, but also back in the 1980s acquired the fields around it, which were arable at that stage. Those are restoring themselves largely to wonderful chalk grassland, but keeping on top of the scrub is a major challenge for us on that site. The fields in question here, I just happened, the day this question came into us, I happened to be going to Pegston to a work party that was working on the fields, dealing with some of the scrub that was being asked about. The nature is, Aidan's here, but he was slightly worried that people would think that the day after somebody sends a question in, we just rush out and deal with it. So he didn't want us to feel that was how it works. We do have a challenge at Pegston in terms of keeping on top of the scrub, but the 2 fields in question there have been left deliberately to allow the scrub to get bigger, because we're looking at whether we get a better success rate in terms of treating the stumps if we can identify them more easily. Now, we're not sure it's going to work, and we've done some work elsewhere down the road in Galley and Warden Hills as part of a PhD project together with the University of Cambridge, looking at different treatments of scrub. But this is part of the same process of looking at to see what works. The question doesn't really go there, but there's an interesting opportunity at Pegston that Natural England have managed to acquire just over 500 acres next door of largely boring woodland and arable, but with some really nice bits and pieces in between. And we will be looking in the longer term as to whether there's the possibility of a joint management plan and grazing across the unit as a whole. But at the moment, there is no plan at all to change our management at Pegston. So although it looks like those fields are being left to scrub up, they've been left to get to the point they're at quite deliberately, but we're now at the stage where we're actually going to try and deal with that pretty rapidly and are herbiciding the stumps as we go along as part of that sort of broader experiment. So hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Right. We have had another question, which is a little bit longer, but essentially it's a query about the level of income from property developers. And I'm going to ask Alison, as the Resources and Business Director, to give a little bit of an explanation of the income we received and who it's from.
So the 5.9 million is mainly the 4.65 million we received for the Trumpington Meadows, which we referred to previously, commuted sum. And I can confirm that none of the income received this year or in past years have come from either IM Properties that I mentioned or from Newlands Corporation that's also mentioned. Regarding our responses and position during the planning stages of these developments, I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Matt, Conservation Director, who will explain our involvement to date.
Yeah, so interestingly, we have objected to these planning applications and, as Alison says, have received no income. So it's slightly worrying that it appears that there is a rumour that we might have done so. I just want to take the opportunity to remind everybody, I'm sure you're all well aware anyway, but the Trust is not an anti-development organisation. We are a pro-wildlife organisation. And the question that was asked earlier about solar panels, the Trust, nationally, the Wildlife Trust have just done a review of the impact of solar panels and the opportunities that arise from solar panels. As with almost every type of development, the answer always is it depends on where you put them and how you manage it. So you can have solar panels which are very positive, you can have solar panels which are an absolute nightmare for wildlife depending on where you put them. The Trust's response to all planning applications is predicated solely on the wildlife interest. That's what we do and what we're interested in. And the Trumpington development is a good example of where, hand on heart, we can say, alongside development, there has been positive action for wildlife. Cambourne, the offices at Cambourne are the other example we always use. I knew Cambourne before a single house went up, and it was largely 3 oilseed rape fields, actually, the year I went round just beforehand. And what is there now is much more positive for wildlife. So development and wildlife are not necessarily opposed. The Nen Valley has some interesting issues because although very little of the surrounding area is designated for its wildlife interest, the gravel pits in the Nen Valley are designated for a whole host of migratory and breeding birds. And one of the complications with the Nen Valley is that some of those birds move off and roost on the surrounding farmland. So there is an issue about what they call functionally linked land. It's another awful term, I'm afraid, but land that is functionally part of the protected sites in the Nen Valley. And these sorts of developments that are being asked about here are largely warehouse distribution developments. Northamptonshire, unfortunately, is distribution central. And the horror, as was said earlier, is that none of those sheds end up with solar panels on the roofs. That's a different issue, but really is an absolutely awful thing. In this case, these developments affect fields where particularly species like golden plover will come off the gravel pits and roost on the farmland. We are working with Natural England to try and come up with a plan that looks at developing appropriate mitigation for the impact of that development. But as that plan doesn't exist yet, we are objecting to these developments.
Thank you, Matt and Alison, for the explanations. That concludes the questions that we received online prior to the meeting. We do have a moment or two, despite my fixation on lunch, for you to ask any other questions relating to what you have heard this morning. So can I throw the floor open? Yes, Peter.
It's on, yes.
Yes.
Going to Hannah, relating to the commuted sum for Trumpington Meadows, so many millions, for 80 years. So does that mean we earmark it in a separate account for 80 years, or do we use it in amongst the other monies? Can you explain how that might work?
So I'm going to look to Brian as well on this one. So a lion's share of that money has been put into investments through our investment company that we work with called Saracen. So of the 4.6, I think 3.9 has gone into investments, and the remainder is there for undesignated spend. So it's going to be used for other things, but Alison, I don't want to add to that. That's where we got to with it.
Yeah, we're reasonably confident that the 3.9 million will cover the full running costs of Trumpington for the 80 years and leave us with a sum at the end of that period. So we're not creating problems for our distant successors. I have to say, with this site and with the land around the Luton guided busway, it did occur to me that if this came on the open market, we might have been quite interested in buying it as a nature reserve. And I think it's a wonderful outcome where developers actually pay us to manage in the long term what's already a pretty fantastic nature reserve and is going to get better as time goes on.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? The gentleman there towards the back. Mind yourself, Louise. In the brown jacket.
Just a quick request. We get lots of lovely information every month or even every week about what's happening in various places. I'm afraid I never know where they are. could you try and add postcodes whenever possible to the sites that you mentioned so that I will know whether it's worth going to see them? I don't know where Pegston is, for instance, that was just mentioned. I do know Trumpington, and I know one or two near Kettering, but there are an awful lot accessible by car that I just... And there might be a gazetteer, there might be a list, but is there some way of letting members know every time you mention a site where it is? But thanks for all you're doing, by the way. This is absolutely wonderful.
Good. Well, there are full details in the handbook of reserves that you should receive as a member, but if you haven't got that, I'm sure the staff will be very happy to pass one on to you. Louise, is there anything you wanted to say from a comms point of view about a mapping of nature reserves and information about them?
Are we on? Yeah. Yes. No, but actually I think that's a really good idea, and I can make sure that whether they're sort of future communications, make sure that they do have some sort of postcodes and things. And yeah, do come and see us if you haven't got a handbook, and we can certainly sort one out for you.
Yes, Peter. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Peter's point was that some postcodes cover a large area, and he was suggesting an alternative location technique of what 3 words or similar, but we'll certainly look at being able to give you clear instructions and locations for nature reserves in our future communications. Okay, anything else from the floor? Gentleman in the front row here.
Great, thank you. Hannah, may I ask, how does the Muchwood Burials project generate income for the Trust?
Alison, I think you're better placed to answer that one.
Okay. So we own 50% of Muchwood Burials. The return we've had to date is 8%, and we are given it by a donation each year. Yeah, straight in as a normal donation clarification. Yeah, classification.
Right, and the lady here with the red top.
Thank you. That was very interesting. This is another question about finances. In the past, the Trust has had an income from wildlife travel. I may not have read the report carefully enough, but I didn't see a mention of wildlife travel, and I wondered what the current arrangement was. Thanks.
I'll hand over to Brian for this one.
At this point, I have to declare an interest in that I'm also a director of wildlife travel. We've been the organisation was set up by the late Franklin Perring, known to some of you, I suspect, in Northamptonshire, and has been donating all of its profits to wildlife trusts since the foundation. Until last year, the donations had gone pro rata to the trust dependent on where holidaymakers came from. So this trust had done moderately well, and in a typical year might get £2,000 or £3,000 from wildlife travel. There was a concern that donations across 46 wildlife trusts made relatively little impact. This trust was never at fault, but I have to say that if you regard donations like that as a sort of the opposite of a mystery shopper, we found that in 1 year, 6 trusts didn't cash the cheque, 2 or 3 trusts didn't acknowledge, very few said thank you. So we decided this time that the whole of the donation would go to a large national appeal, and this time it's gone to the Rothbury estate. Oh, my apologies, it's gone to the Celtic Rainforest this time. We'll talk about Rothbury for next year. So the Celtic Rainforest is a massive project covering about 10 wildlife trusts from Cornwall right up to southwest Scotland, and the feeling was the impact of a £10,000 donation would be greater on that project than it would have been split between 30-odd wildlife trusts. So that was a decision by the Board of Wildlife Travel, and I have to say, as a member of staff of this trust, I thought I was being quite honourable in saying that's a better outcome than letting my trust have its usual £2,000. I hope local people, and particularly wildlife travellers, take that point. And if you've never travelled with wildlife travel, I'd strongly recommend it.
Yes. Thanks for the plug, Brian. Okay. I'm going to draw things to a close there, but to allow Laurie her 2 minutes to give you a brief on what's happening this afternoon, in case you just need a quick reminder. So, Laurie, first of all, I'm going to bring the AGM to a close, and thank you very much for joining us. So that concludes our formal business. Thank you for your participation and your questions. And then I will now ask Laurie just to run through what happens about lunch and this afternoon's activities.
Lovely, thank you very much. I will keep it very brief. So we have got lunches today through this side of the wall, as you can see there. We are going to form an orderly queue, please, because we haven't got very much space. Through the single door, you'll file through, collect your lunch bag, come through these double doors here, and then if you could file your way through to the gym, where you'll find, as I said earlier, cake and fruit awaiting you. That will be really helpful. If I could ask those people that are going on walks this afternoon, please make your way to the lunch area first, and those staying at venue for sustainable activities and Brian's microscope activity, if you could just allow them that little bit of space to capture their food bags first, that would be really helpful. And just a note that the activities will be taking place in this hall for the venue activities, and at 1:45 we will start gathering people that are going on the coaches to make sure we leave promptly at 2 p.m. So other than that, enjoy your lunches. The sandwich fillings are shown on the door, so please do have a look at those before you go in, see what you would like. And the dietary requirements, they will actually be put in the main hall here. So if you have got a dietary requirement and you put your request in, it will still be in the main hall. Thank you very much. And I think we've kept to time.